Question. I was thinking about this. What do you think is the greatest challenge in your business today? Many people would say, well, inventories are low. Others would say that it's, my listing presentation, I've got to improve that, or I have a difficult time getting on the phone and prospecting with people. We can give all sorts of answers as to what our number one challenge is in today's marketplace. But what I believe is, in my 24 years of being in the business, and not only as an agent out there actively working in the business, engaged in trying to find business, but also from the standpoint of a broker owner, and more specifically as a coach, the thing that I found is the number one challenge of any real estate agent is actually the number one challenge of all human beings, and it's mindset. So if you're taking notes today, I want you just at the top of your notepad, write down mindset. And more specifically, what I want you to write down is this: mindset is a skill set. If you know me, if you've heard me talk for any length of time about this topic, you know I use that phrase a lot, that mindset is a skill set, because I truly believe that it is. The way we think is something that can be controlled. And so I want to share with you some thoughts today about that, and more specifically, maybe a story or two. You know, it's said that oftentimes that people are either going into a challenge, that there's something that's going on in their life, some, I would say, storm, so to speak. Given what's going on down in the South and Southeast, the storms that we're watching. I mean, storms that can absolutely wreck a person's life, just mentally and emotionally, where we're going into those, or where we might be in those currently or coming out. If you're alive and you're on the call, you know what I'm talking about. The challenge is, the part of life is that you're going to be presented with challenges, and you're either going in one, you're in one currently, or you're coming out. So having that in mind, the thing that I wrote down here is this. I said, we aren't victims of our circumstances, but more specifically, we are responsible for our decisions. Let me say that again, and if you want to write it down, I can say it a couple more times, but let me say it again. We are not victims of our circumstances, ladies and gentlemen. You're not a victim of what's going on in your life. You're responsible for your decisions. That is a mindset. That is a way of interpreting what's going on in your life. See, it's true. It's said oftentimes that bad things happen to good people. That is true. I get that. The good people down in Texas or down in Florida, those people don't deserve what's going on. And yet we know that, bad things happen to good people. The question isn't whether bad things are going to happen to good people. The question is, how do we respond? See, we are not victims of our circumstances. We're responsible for decisions. And I say that more specifically as it relates to the business, as it relates to what's going in our lives personally. So let me say that one more time. We are not victims of our circumstances. We are responsible for our decisions. A couple of weeks ago, I was having a conversation with a manager in the organization, and they said something to me that was interesting. She asked me, she said, "How are you doing today?" And I said, "I'm fantastic." And she said, "It's interesting. Every time I ask you that question, it doesn't matter the time of day, whether I'm on the phone with you or face to face, or I see you in conversation with other people when they ask that question, you always come up with the answer fantastic or awesome or amazing." She said, I want to ask you a question. Are you being truthful with that? When you say that, do you really mean it? And I said, well, of course I do. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't say it. When I say that I'm doing amazingly, or I'm fantastic, or things are outstanding, I truly mean it. She said, well, don't you have bad days? And I said, well, I guess that I could, but I choose not to. She said, well, that doesn't make any sense to me, because everybody has a bad day. And I said, well, let me share with you a story. And this is the story that I shared with her. I said, we're coming up on 2 years. It'll be 2 years this November that my mother passed away. And I said, obviously I remember the day very clearly, not only because it just happened recently, but because it was the day that my mother died. I said the night before she passed away, the family had gathered in her hospital room to spend time with her. Now, we didn't know that her death was imminent. We were there just to support her in hopes that she would get better and be able to go back home. But that evening, everyone was gathered around her bed and in her room, and there were probably about 15, maybe 20 people in the room. It was packed. And at one point, my mom kind of sat up, and she got this big, like, Cheshire cat grin on her face, and she said, "This is perfect." And we looked at her like, "What's perfect?" And she said, "This is exactly what I wanted." She said, "Family and friends are here and we're all together." And she just smiled. She was content. Well, everybody went home except for my brother. My brother decided to stay with her that night because we were doing shifts and spending time with her, so she wasn't alone. Well, the next morning at 4:30 a.m., I wake up out of a dead sleep. I mean, I was absolutely asleep, and I'm a great sleeper, but for whatever reason, right at 4:30 a.m., I woke up, which is earlier than I normally wake up because I'll normally wake up at 4:45. I woke up at 4:30, and as I woke up to look at my phone, which is on my nightstand next to my bed, it read 4:30, and then the phone started to ring, and it was my brother. And so I got nervous, and I answered it, and I said hello, and he didn't say hello, he just said, "She's passing right now." My mother was passing as I was talking to him on the phone. So I gathered my family, we all went to the hospital. We got there about an hour later, and other family members arrived, and we spent some time with my mom that morning in her room, or at least with her body. And we talked about her, we celebrated her life. Well, after we did that, we decided to all get in our own cars and then gather at a restaurant and have breakfast together. And I have pictures of that moment eating breakfast, several pictures, and there are nothing but faces with smiles and people having a good time. And I mean that legitimately. That's what was going on. We were smiling, laughing, and having a good time, including my dad, who had been in a relationship with my mom for 46 years. And yet he was smiling and laughing. And I do not recall, and I say this honestly, I do not recall that there was a tear shed at that breakfast that we all enjoyed together. Now you might say, "John, well, how is that possible? I mean, didn't you care about your mom? How could you say that you didn't shed a tear?" What I said to this person as I shared with her that story, I said, "I can tell you honestly that the day that my mother died was an amazing day." I said it was an amazing day, not because she passed, but because we chose to, rather than focus on her passing, we chose to focus on celebrating her life. See, we have a choice to either mourn what we lost, or we can celebrate what we have. It was just a moment of time where we got to decide how we were going to respond. So it goes back to that whole statement of we're not victims of our circumstances, we're responsible for our decisions. So I want you to think about that. I want to ask you a question. How did you wake up this morning? I don't mean, did you have an alarm clock go off, or did your spouse or significant other punch you in the arm and say, "Hey, buddy or gal, get up, it's time to get up"? No, what I want to know is, how did you get up? How did you feel mentally and emotionally when you woke up this morning? Did you feel amazing, awesome, powerful? Did you feel outstanding? Or did you have an attitude of, "I really don't want to get up. I'm not excited about getting up. I'm not excited about the day"? See, again, what I would say is the way you felt was simply a decision. We get to decide what we're going to focus on. Let me just tell you a very quick story. Many of you have heard this story about the importance of focus, but I just want to share it with you because it's a fun story, and I know that some of you haven't heard it. In my household, in my family, we try to avoid genetically modified foods for specific health reasons. And I won't get into the detail of that, but we just decide not to eat genetically modified foods, or GMOs. Well, my middle daughter several years ago was trying to teach my son Jack about the dangers of stranger danger. And so she asked Jack this question. She said, "Jack, if Mom and Dad were gone and Gabrielle and I were gone and you were the only person at home in front of the house," and as I'm listening to her tell me this whole story, I'm asking myself, why would she think that we would all leave Jack alone at home by himself in the front yard? But that was a different conversation. But she asked him, if they weren't home and a van pulled up out in front and the van window rolled down and the person driving the van said, "Hey, Jack, your parents said that you should come over to our house and we'll watch a movie and we'll pop some popcorn," what would you say to that stranger in the van? Well, Jack, without any hesitation, said to Caroline, "Well, I wouldn't go." And Caroline was thinking, great, now he understands stranger danger. We don't have to worry about him getting in a van with a stranger. And she said, "Well, why wouldn't you go?" And he said, "Well, because the popcorn that they would serve would be genetically modified popcorn, and we don't eat genetically modified popcorn." Now, of course, that's a funny story, and Jack missed the point of what Caroline was trying to teach, but isn't that really what I'm saying here? See, we can oftentimes focus on the wrong things. We do that. We focus on the wrong things. Remember, if you are not feeling powerful, if you're not feeling outstanding, if you're not feeling amazing, if you're not feeling fantastic, I can tell you it's what's going on in your mind. You're giving space in your mind to things that are causing you to feel that way. And you may not like that statement. You may say, well, but John, there are things that happen in my life that I can't avoid. I have to think about them. I have to focus on them. And I would ask you this question. Really? Do you? I mean, I'm not saying that we should be Pollyannish. I'm not saying that we need to avoid paying attention to the challenges in our life, because the fact is, if we're alive, we're on this call, we all have challenges. That's not my point. The question is, how are we going to interpret those challenges? How are we going to respond? It's no different than the way that I chose to respond when my mother passed away. Look, let me share something with you. As a kid, when my mom decided to go to school to get a nursing degree so she could work, because she decided that she wanted to provide some income for the family. It was really a necessity. I remember as she would drive away in the morning, or as she was supposed to be coming back home from school, I remember how scared I was. Scared when she was leaving that she wouldn't come back, and then the evening when she wasn't back at the time that I expected, I was afraid that she wasn't going to return, because I legitimately thought that she was going to get killed in a car accident. That's what I thought. So there were times where she would be late and I was petrified that she was not going to arrive. I was absolutely scared that I was going to lose my mother. I can tell you confidently, and I say this with absolute sincerity, there was no other person in my life who has done more for me and had a greater impact on me than my mother. And I think most of us could probably say that, because mothers play such a significant role. So the reason I share that with you is I want you to understand that I had such a great and amazing relationship with my mother, and yet the day she passed away was still fantastic. The reason that it was is because I chose to focus on things that allowed me to feel that way. So what I want to do in the time that we have remaining, I want to share with you what it takes to, on a daily basis, maintain an attitude where when somebody walks up to you and they ask you, how are you doing, you can legitimately say that you're amazing, you're outstanding, or you're fantastic, because you can. What I believe is this, that mindset is a skill set. And as such, because it's a skill set, as long as we focus on what it takes to maintain a powerful mindset, and we practice that process, that we can maintain a mindset that is powerful, so that we don't have bad days. It's not to say that I don't have bad moments. I do. There are moments legitimately where I wake up in the morning and I don't want to get up. I don't want to come into the office. You know what that makes me? You know what that makes you if you experience that? It makes you human, ladies and gentlemen. But what will make you abnormal, what will make you exceptional, would be that you don't allow that feeling, that emotion, and therefore those actions to persist. That if you will recognize what's going on and then do very specific things, you can get out of that slump so that it is a mini slump and not a slump that lasts a day, 2 days, a week, a month, and for some people, several years. I firmly believe that for a lot of people who suffer from depression, that it is simply a habit. So let me ask you that question. What are your habits? Think about that. What habits have you engaged in that without question are controlling the way that you feel? If you find that you're having a bad day more often than you'd like to, if you find that you are not as powerful or as confident as you would like to be, the thing that I would ask you to question yourself about is this. What are your habits? Ask yourself that. What are my habits? Because what I believe is this, that our habits really demonstrate what our rules are, what our stories are, the way we will act and the way we interpret what happens in our lives. Remember this. Our standards, our philosophies, our rules, more specifically our story, the story that we tell ourselves, those things affect the way that we feel. And the way we feel will impact the way that we act. And the way we act will then dictate the results that we get. So, what are the cornerstones of a powerful mindset? More specifically, what I would say is this. What are the cornerstones? So I'm writing this on the board, the word confidence. What are the cornerstones of confidence? What do we have to do to be powerful? What do we have to do to maintain an optimistic or an outstanding mindset that allows us to not have a bad day, but rather just experience bad moments and then get out of it? Well, there are 4 specific things. Number 1, let me write this down here. Number 1, we have to make certain that there's absolute clarity. So, For many of you, you say, well, John, I've heard this before. I get it. You're going to hear again that these very foundational things, because it's not that you haven't heard it before. My question for you is, are you doing these things? Are you practicing these things? Are these things your rules, your standards? Are these things part of the story that you tell yourself on a daily basis? Or do you simply buy off on the idea that there are bad things going on in your life and that you're a victim, and but for these things, things would be better? But for the fact that inventories are low, your business would be better. But for the fact that competition's giving away their services by discounting their commissions, things would be better. But for the fact that the competition will lie to a seller and tell them that their home is worth more, and that's how they get the listings, your life would be better. But for the challenges that you might have in your personal life, maybe your spouse, maybe that you've got health issues, maybe you say to yourself, but for the fact that genetically I have these challenges, my life would be better. See, all of those things are excuses. And what they do is they allow you to play the role of a victim. And I'm here to say to you, you're not a victim unless you choose to be a victim. So what we have to do is we have to wrest control from the outside and those external forces, and realize that whatever solution to our challenges that is out there, that solution is always going to be internal. And it starts with our belief that we can succeed, that we can achieve what it is that we want, that we can become the person and be the person, because that person's inside of us, to achieve the things that we want in this business and in life. Number one, it is clarity. Clarity of purpose. When you woke up this morning, and if those of you who would say, like I did, woke up this morning and didn't feel powerful or optimistic or confident, what were you thinking about? What were your thoughts focused on? Were you clear about what you wanted to accomplish today? Did you have a specific goal in mind? Because see, immediately when I woke up feeling that way, I just simply asked this question: what do I intend to accomplish today, and whose lives do I intend to affect positively? And very quickly I can tell you what came to mind: this call. As soon as I remembered that I was going to be doing this call and I was going to be sharing this message, that idea of lack of confidence, of a lack of clarity, went away. And very clearly I had a purpose, a reason, and therefore a confidence to get up out of bed, to go through my regular routine, and be powerful in the process of doing that. Clarity creates power, ladies and gentlemen. When we are clear about what we are going to do and how we're going to do it, there's a greater sense of clarity and therefore confidence. It's when we don't know that creates uncertainty and fear, and therefore we lack the power that we need. So remember, if you're feeling a lack of confidence, ask yourself, what is it I'm not clear about? And you might say, well, there are some things that I can't get absolutely clear about now because there are things that I have to learn. I get it. So at least acknowledge those things and then put together a plan. For example, if you said, well, it's my process of prospecting. I'm not so good at prospecting, and I don't know exactly how to do it in a way that gets me the results that I want. Fine. Then recognize that and ask the questions: what has to change? What do I have to learn? Who could I learn from? Who could coach me? Who could I meet with? Who could give me some feedback and give me some coaching on how to change my approach and the process necessary to practice it so I can improve the clarity that I have in my mind. Remember, clarity creates power. And then number two, it's integrity. Integrity is a building block of confidence. And what I would say is, as it relates to clarity, it's this, or excuse me, the integrity is this. Number one, it's integrity with yourself. It always starts there. You cannot have integrity with others if, first of all, you do not maintain a sense of integrity with yourself. And specifically, I would say to your rules, your standards, and your philosophies. I always say this, that our rules, our philosophies, and our standards aren't what we say they are, but they're rather what we do. So examine that. If you wake up in the morning or you're going throughout the course of your day and you're not feeling powerful, optimistic, you're not feeling outstanding, ask yourself this question: am I living by my standards? Am I living by my rules? Am I living by my philosophies? See, oftentimes we'll say what our standards are, but then we act a different way. Our standards here, our actions here, and it creates that gap. Well, do you know what that gap is? That gap is a lack of self-confidence. See, if we will elevate our actions to our standards, we will feel more confident because we will have integrity. It's when we know we're living below our own personal standards that we lack confidence. And then the second thing as it relates to integrity is having integrity to other people. doing for them what we say we're going to do, or more specifically, doing for them what we know they need. So, for example, in a listing presentation conversation, or a buyer-broker agreement conversation, telling the seller or the buyers what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear, so that they have the right information, the right perspective to take the decisions that are best for them. For example, a seller and a price reduction, or when listing the home, telling them what their home is worth, or that their home is overpriced if it is, and being okay with the outcome. Because it's a lot easier to go to bed at night knowing that you told the seller the truth about their home and putting your head on the pillow with absolute integrity, as opposed to not telling them the truth and letting them go on thinking that their home's going to sell when it's not, and then you end up being the bad guy or the bad gal. So remember, integrity to yourself and to others. And then the third cornerstone to confidence is our gratitude. Let me ask you, how many of you woke up this morning feeling grateful? How many of you enumerated the things in your life that you have to be grateful for? Your health, if you have great health. The roof over your head, the bed that you were sleeping in. I saw people yesterday as I was traveling about town who didn't have beds to sleep in, who didn't have roofs over their head. I passed a park and a gentleman was sleeping literally on the sidewalk. So his bed is concrete. And it was middle of the day, about lunchtime, and he's still asleep. And I suspect he was still asleep because he probably didn't sleep very well during the night. He probably wasn't very safe. Did you, this morning, recognize your gratitudes? Those in your life who love you, those in your life who look to you to provide for them. The gratitude of the opportunity to lead others, to help others grow, to help others achieve what it is that they want to achieve in this business of real estate. What do you have to be grateful for? I always say this, and I firmly believe this because it's been my personal experience. Those moments where I lack a sense of self-confidence, it usually comes from the fact that I'm focused on my problems as opposed to looking to other people and how I can change their lives and improve their lives. Gratitude and fear do not coexist. They can't. If you are absolutely grateful and you focus on those things, it will snuff out fear every single time. So remember, when you're not feeling confident, get grateful. Write down the things you have to be grateful for. And then the fourth cornerstone is contribution. This morning when I got up, remember, when I wasn't feeling powerful, outstanding, amazing, confident, I simply asked myself this question: what am I going to do today? And it came down to this: I'm going to make a difference in the lives of other people. And then I asked myself, well, what specifically are you going to do? And I remembered the coaching call. I remembered this conversation that we're having right here. What I know is this, ladies and gentlemen, and I want you to believe this, I want you to understand this, I want you to know this. You are a leader. Every single one of you. I don't care if you've been in this business a day or you've been in this business for decades. You are a leader. When you got into this business, you signed up to be a leader. That's what you are. And the people that you would like to have follow you, your customers, your clients, your prospects, will never follow you if you don't have confidence. They demand of you absolute confidence. If you lack confidence, they will lack confidence, and therefore there's no opportunity to lead. Well, what I know is this: if you'll remember that these people that you want to work with, these people you want to serve, need a confident person, you'll be confident. Think about this. Have you ever had a stranger walk up to you and ask a favor of you? Maybe someone who was in need, it was an emergency, and they ask you for your help. Do you remember how you felt when they asked you that question? Did you say to yourself in your mind, oh, I couldn't do that, I can't help you? Or did you step up and say, of course I can help you, what do you need? See, I know that we always feel more confident and more capable when others ask for our assistance. We always seem to, for whatever reason,